Hi, hello. Bonsoir. Welcome to Reed Hall. I'm Marie Dorini. I'm the Paris director of the Columbia Institute for Ideas and Imagination. It's wonderful to see so many of you here today for a special, very special screening of João Gonzalez's films. Some of them he will be accompanying on the piano because he's also a pianist and a composer and a current fellow at the Institute. He will tell you more about the films he'll be showing. Afterwards, he will be in conversation with another wonderful fellow, the poet Lynn, who's sitting here with her wonderful daughters. À tout à l'heure.
Thank you so much for coming. I'll just make a very tiny brief introduction about what you're going to see. I'm going to show my 3 short films that I made up to date. And I'm going to play piano on the first one. And the reason for this is it's actually a project that I conceived for it to always have a live performance whenever it was shown live. I did this film when I was still unsure if I wanted to pursue animation or just pursue piano. And so by making this, I would force myself to play it live and lose my fear of playing in front of an audience, because I've been away from the stages for a long time at that time. And I wanted to do a master's in piano. So the first film is about a pianist who suffers from agoraphobia. And he kind of is able to travel outside of his apartment through music. He makes the voyage in his head, although he's sustained by someone else, although he imagines that he does it himself. The second film will be Nestor, which is my first year film. Was my first year film at the Royal College of Art. It's about a sailor who suffers from OCD and lives in his own worst nightmare, which is a boat that never stops oscillating. And so everything is always constantly out of place. And lastly, you'll see Ice Merchants, which was my graduation film for my master's. And it's about a father and son who live in a very surrealistic landscape and that survive by selling ice. And I hope you have a good time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. I think this is the first time I've seen all 3 films together. I think it's really,
it's really interesting how emotional your films are. Because they all sort of take place in this state of precarity or situations of extreme precarity. As my daughter says, she watched it and she's like, well, he doesn't like when things are out of place, so the boat is a really bad place to be. And I think that what was interesting sort of for the films to build 2 ice merchants where you see this situation of precarity and as the condition of our existence, like physically kind of actualized, being at the mercy of the sea or at the mercy of the mountain, perched so up high, and also tied to conditions of isolation and solitude. I thought that was very interesting. So I thought maybe I could start to ask you to speak about kind of the situations of precarity as the condition of our existence. Yeah. And also, well, I'll follow up with that, but
okay.
Yeah,
thank you. So all my films take place in weird realities, let's say. I feel like a difficult thing about animation while you're directing is that you have a blank page, so you'd never know where to start because you can literally do anything. And so by limiting myself to a specific place that normally is always a place that I either dream of or that I thought about before going to bed, those images that pop at your head with the extreme intensity, and then you think about them and they disappear, but for a glimpse of a second they were incredibly, some of them like very emotional and very touching to you. So I limit myself to, okay, I'm gonna make a film in this location that I thought of. I don't know why it came to my mind, but I will figure out a story that will take place there. So normally the space comes before the themes of the film that I want to make. I kind of find off the film's theme along the way. I normally have a rough idea of the feeling that I want to exploit, that I want to investigate. In Ice Merchants, for example, I knew it was going to be a film where I would, experience the feeling of loneliness, of loss, of even death in a way. So it's like a coping mechanism film in a way. And mixing that with that tiny house attached to a tall cliff, which was a recurring image that I had a lot of times, by having those things all together, that feeling, and also even like imagining myself in the situation. Some people ask me how I come up with these scenarios or with the structure of the film, and I think like if you're a person like me that overthinks everything and automatically normally expects the worst, when like your mind already does that, your mind naturally builds dramatic scenarios of everything. So if in pre-production I'm able to situate myself in the location where the film is going to take place, and I already have a feeling, and consciously my mind will start thinking about stories of things that normally could go wrong.
Okay. I like the coping mechanisms. I wanted to ask, because sort of this evening's talk is titled Animating the Subconscious, perhaps we could I could ask you to speak about those two terms in particular. What is the subconscious for you? Not, in any context of theory but for you, what is what is subconscious? And then what is for you animation? Because I think that these could be sort of twin movements in some ways.
So just coming back, because I forgot to add, you're talking about space and precarious situations. I feel like because my film's location normally comes before anything, that I also pair, of course, with music. I'm going to talk about it in a bit. I treat the film's location as it was another character. So the character, normally my films, the character, there's a problem, they live in a precarious situation, because the film will have a climax where there will be a battle, but a battle between the human character and the place where he lives. And so I treat it as a character, and normally most stories that I come up with are dramas, so at the end they are dramatic in a way. But coming back to the subconscious, for the subconscious, when I thought about this title, for me the subconscious is the metaphysical world that all of us go when they are either, some people while meditating or while dreaming, or again those images that sometimes you have when you're daydreaming and they are like very strong. And I feel like our metaphysical world is based on experiences that we have, places that we've seen, but then when we're dreaming, we go to that metaphysical world and everything is meshed up in a weird way, and sometimes it even emits even more intense feelings. I feel like some of the most intense feelings that I had in my life were actually while I was dreaming. Probably there's a chemical explanation for that, why you feel specific things. But when you think of a long time memory that happened like 6 or 7 years ago, and it has like a specific color, a specific filter onto it, that's while you're experiencing it, you don't know, you don't feel it, you only feel it afterwards. And I feel like while I'm dreaming, especially when I'm lucid dreaming, I'm aware that I'm already feeling that nostalgia at the same time I'm experiencing that. And so that for me is extremely motivating, and that's where I go fish for, at least not the ideas, because the ideas for my films and the narrative are something that I build while I'm conscious, of course, but at least the feeling that I want my films to have is deeply based on the metaphysical world where I like to spend a lot of time.
Okay. I was curious about this metaphysical world. Do you create conditions for, let's say, transport to visit? Because you talk about lucid dreaming. What do how do you get to that place? Because what are some of the?
So in my films, I normally it's through a lot of drawing. A lot of literally closing my eyes and imagining that I'm there. And also to help me even more, what I do is, although my films are not 3D, I don't use 3D animation for my films, but I do build the movie sets where the films take place in 3D. And so the actual House of Ice Merchants is actually completely modeled in 3D. If I had like a graphic printer, I could print it and you could see all the rooms and all the tables and everything. And so that allows me, while I'm in pre-production, to open the file and literally go upstairs, downstairs, okay, I'm going to the balcony. And being in that place, which is like a materialization of my unconsciousness in a way, helps me have more ideas. Because again, my ideas come from, I think, for example, live action, there's a lot of I'm going to travel to get inspiration. I'm going to that island because I'm going to make a film here, and that's going to help me. But in animation, our films' realities don't exist. They live in our subconscious. So I try to materialize as much as possible that place that doesn't exist, so I can access more easily have ideas for the film. And also another thing that I use is music a lot in pre-production, because I feel like a film's feeling is a combination, at least for me, 50-50 between sound, music, and also the visuals. So one thing that I do is, and I'm doing that in my film right now, I start composing the soundtrack in pre-production, and however I'm going back home or going to the institute or I'm going shopping, I'm normally always listening to the demos that I composed the day or the day before. And I'm on the subway and they're, oh, I like this transition, but I want this chord to be somewhere different. And then I take note, and the next day I come to the piano and I change it. But more importantly, I compose something that on purpose makes me feel like I want the people to feel while they watch the film. So again, that also helps me generate ideas and put me into that metaphysical world where it's easier for me to create.
That's really beautiful. I mean, I was just thinking about, because I do think that the way you talk about animation is for you to actually sort of create a place where you can dream, where you can enter the dream and walk through it as your character or as the story unfolds. So it starts with this building. It seems like it starts with some kind of space that you arrange, and then the story opens as your character moves through that space. That's really beautiful. I want to talk about the music, but before I do, I was also really interested in time and duration, temporality of specifically in relationship to certain gestures and acts of looking that we were asked to do, right? Because you, like, for example, I guess my question more abstractly is how long does it take for a gesture to become signified or meaningful for us? Like, how do you know how long to do it for? For example, when the boy is rummaging around in the cupboard for the yellow mug, right? So how long do you know it would take us to figure out that this was the mother's mug? Or, you know, when the parachute is falling and when they lose it, how long are we supposed to look at it for? Like when we realize, oh yeah, that's, like how do you figure it out? Like how long?
About time, and a lot of people ask me if my music background helps me, not specifically in time of the film itself, but about, you know, and to animate, because I'm also one of the two animators of the film. So, like, if knowing the gesture of like the timing of how characters move, if that comes from my music background, and if that helps me. And to be fair, I don't know how to answer that question because I don't know if the music influenced it. However, I know that music influenced in what you're saying, which is about you know, the importance of sometimes microseconds, splits of second. And now, for example, when I started playing piano very young, I know I was 4 or 5, and I remember a lot of classes with my teacher that I would play a passage. And then he was like, no, do it like this, but hold it a bit on this note, like just a glimpse, and I'll do it again. And for me, it would feel exactly the same, but it was like, oh no, this is amazing now. And at that time, I didn't understood it, but I feel like I don't have a rule of thumb on how to know if how long it needs for a specific scene. But I think that because that my music background helped me having a better intuition about how long I think like one shot should be, and the importance of, for example, adding 1 second of a pause in a movement would, you know, change our perception of what we're watching. For example, a challenge in animation shorts is that you don't want to make something like that's just running too long or too short. But in specific moments, you need to take time to breathe. There are some parts of the film that there's not much going on in terms of narrative, But for example, when the father and the kid is on the father's lap and they are watching, like that scene actually takes quite a long time, and but it's with a purpose. Although nothing is happening, it unconsciously, I believe, it's setting in your deep subconscious the idea they are very together and makes you care more about them. I believe that a good film is a combination of a lot of micro decisions that people in the audience are not consciously thinking about it, but unconsciously it really changes how they feel the film. And I feel like my music background, because it's classical music, is very precise about. It goes to a level of like detail that I've never seen in other, artistic area or technical area, and. When I was a kid, I really disliked it, but now I understand its importance, and for me, I think really helped me have a better idea of how long some shots or moments should have.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because I think that we've talked about how we both work very intuitively, and I think that perhaps the kind of the formal temporality of classical music training kind of really just built that intuition into, because it's, well, because the films are so simple, right? They're so really pared down, and I think that the shots are so deliberate. The frames are so deliberate that I really was interested in kind of how long to hold forms of attention, and I'm going to ask one last question, and then I'm going to give it to you guys, because I know you guys want to ask questions. This one is about style, right? You have a very distinct style, and I remember you said something like, "The more human they look, the less I care about them." The character, like talking about the characters, because the more human they look, they're not defenseless. So that there is this sort of insistence on kind of presenting of vulnerability, and also, not too much eyes, right? Not too much in the face, not too much in the eyes. It's so much about, right? The legs are so long of the father. So there's a distortion physically, and then also I think there was something. What is it? The blurring. What is it called? Burning, or what is it called? Boiling. Yeah. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that.
My style? I think my style is a combination about things that I was always interested about drawing. For example, the shadows, the perspectives. I was always much more interested in drawing landscapes, cities when I was a kid, buildings with perspective rather than characters. Characters is something that I only started way later in life, like 5 years ago or 6 years ago. So now I just thought of something, because a lot of people, why are their legs so big? And I feel like I designed my characters as they were buildings. Yeah. And so it's easier for me to think about them that way, because also I can, in specific shots, I can also use more perspective because they are so elongated. Mm-hmm. So that's, I never thought of that, so that's cool. And about the facial features of my film. My characters, as you can see, don't have a lot of human emotions on their face, let's say. And that's for two reasons. The first one is my limited background in arts, because I actually studied sciences when I was in high school. I actually went to arts because I failed my math exam that was going to put me into engineering school. So if I ever studied for that math exam, I wouldn't be here, and I'm very happy I didn't study. But so I never study human emotions, but also on the other hand, I figured out what you just said. We had a conversation. I felt like a lot of the characters in the films that I saw that actually touched me the most were not the ones that portrayed more emotions. Of course, and that's not easy. I'm not bashing on people who use, of course, on their characters. But it's a very straightforward tool that you can use. Okay, if I want people to feel sad, I'm going to make my main character look sad. Mm-hmm. That's completely valid. But if you take out that tool, that forces yourself to find a way through narrative, through editing, through directing, to convey emotion without relying on that tool. And so I feel like because I had that limitation, but also because I was not too interested in making human facial features, I had to develop that ability to convey emotion without using that. I have a theory that maybe I told you, but I feel like it's a bit related to how we see animals. They are not, because they are not as able to express emotions through their face, but in a way we care more about them when there's like a sad video of a dog or something. If we actually care debatably a lot because they are more defenseless, because they cannot explain what's happening in their head. And maybe there's some correlation why, at least for me, some characters, when you don't show a lot in their face, maybe they feel more defenseless. I don't know.
Well, as you're talking, I was thinking about maybe it's possible that, the more you take away, right? There's no sound, I mean, there's no word, there's no live dialogue, and the facial features are limited. And I think maybe the more you take away and the more time you give for us to create the narrative, or to build and to stay with the characters, the more that our feelings unfold in them, that sort of deepens almost like dimensionally. So that's really interesting, yeah.
And also it's a compromise in a way, because I feel like the more you hold it, when you show, it actually has more impact. For example, there's actually one moment in the film where you see a facial expression, which is when the father, a close-up of the father that and there's like a tear. And I believe like that scene may be heavy, specifically because you haven't seen it before in the film, so it strikes you maybe a bit harder. And same with music. I'm, for example, I do the music for my films, and a big challenge that we have as music composers is that we have naturally want to put the music on the film. Is like a way of showing our music. But I realized through making films that the more I make films, the less music I want on the films. I will always want music, but again, the more you hold and you have silence, you have sound ambience and everything. When the music hits, if it's on the right moment, it will hit harder. On the other hand, if you just put a soundtrack over the entire film, you kind of use all your, or your ability to feel sad or impressed or something. So you need to be very balanced about it. So I think it's the same. I have the same theory about music and facial expressions, which is if you use it in the specific moments, it's more powerful than just just because you can, it doesn't mean like you should put. Yeah.
No, because I think it was very striking when in Ice Merchants, right before the title opens, like we see it, and then the music comes when the title hits, and then you see them in the air, right? And it is a very emotional moment because they're in free fall. Anyway, okay, I'm going to open it. I have more questions, but I'm going to give it to you all now.
Hello.
Hello. First of all, no, I'm not going to. I'm going to stand up. Okay. First of all, congratulations on your movies.
Thank you
Really
very much.
beautiful. I was wondering, as I was seeing your movies, there's no language in your movies. I mean, language we speak, and I was wondering if that's a specific choice. If you're looking to explore maybe in your next movies with language, or maybe you don't like dialogue because you're an overthinker.
Thank you so much for your question. It's a mixture actually, because it's both a choice, because I like. Okay, it's similar to the human facial expressions. So I'm very bad at writing dialogues. So unconsciously and consciously as well, I conceive films that don't use words because I would be very bad at that. On the other, like some people ask me as well, like why didn't you put words on Ice Merchants? And I think like it would just add a layer of information that it's not important for the film, and also it would maybe, because there's more information, you wouldn't be so into what the film is telling. So I feel I'm not anti words, of course. And if I ever come up with the idea of a film that relies on dialogue, and there are amazing films with dialogue, especially in animated shorts, authorial, where the dialogue kind of contradicts what is happening and visually, and there's like a huge, nice metaphor going on. And I had some ideas for that, for example, but it's something that I need to exploit in the future because right now I'm not a good writer at all. I don't feel like I feel like I'm okay at how to say, writing narratives, but I'm not very eloquent to put it into dialogues. So for me, it's easier to write a narrative like this and then guide it through sounds, music, and my drawings. But also, it's because I know from the beginning that I'm not a good writer, so my ideas unconsciously come without the need of. I think in my 3 films until now, I think like if I put words there, it wouldn't add anything. And one thing that I also learned, it's you shouldn't put something on a film just because you can, and that's sometimes like a film with a lot of limitations, technical limitations and monetary limitations, sometimes actually makes a better film than the next film of the director that then is very, very successful and has millions of dollars to spend. Okay, I'm going to put this, everything, and then it becomes like this sort of like everything comes together but with not a specific purpose, and you miss the main focus of the film. So I try to consciously limit on the things that I'm not good at doing and some that I'm a bit better at doing. Hello.
Oh.
Hello.
Hi, thank you. It was very beautiful shorts.
Thank you very much.
I was just wondering if there was a political motivation behind Ice Merchants, because I see this story and it's not only like the loss of a parent, but I actually think this story might happen a lot. Like there are a lot of parents that risk their lives at job every day, and this story is probably very common actually.
No, I mean, it definitely can have that political connotation, but it was not. It's something that along the way, while I was making the film, I realized that it could be a possible interpretation, of course, as well as, for example, the global warming topic that a lot of people associate with the film. And I can tell you how the global topic came, for example. I already had established the film, and I knew that something was going to happen to the house, so I needed a motive for the house to collapse. And I knew that at the end the characters were going to be saved by something that they planted every day without knowing. That was my main idea that I wanted for this film to have. And so I had to find 2 solutions. For the house, because they were already very up there, I thought, okay, initially it was just ropes that were going to get old, like progressively looser and then break. But I was like, okay, they are in a very tall place. That maybe on a specific warm day, there could be an avalanche, and that's the purpose. But of course, that as soon as I did that decision, I knew that, okay, now the film also has a global warming connotation, which is okay. But it was not the main focus on the film in the beginning. And the other, and I like to tell this story, the story about the hats. So I knew that they were going to, again, be saved by something that planted every day. But I didn't know yet, while I designed the characters wearing hats before knowing that the hats were going to be so important for the story. And this is also funny because it comes back to another limitation that I had at the time when I started making this film. I was still very recent into animation, and I was very afraid of drawing hair on characters because it's very difficult, and especially in animation, it's a big trouble. So both in Nestor and Ice Merchants, they wear either a beanie or a hat just because I thought it looked cool. But at the end, again, it's about that I was saying, like immersing myself into the reality. I'm going back home, listening to the music and playing in my head that scene of their jumping every day. They were like, oh, they jump every day and they wear hats. Maybe they lose the hats. I remember that one day I created like this funny. It was just like a funny side story that they lose the hats, and every day they had to buy a new one. And it was like this small silly ritual that they had. And I remember one night I was almost falling asleep and I was like, wait, there's a lot of hats. Maybe that's the solution. So again, also coming back to the structure, and those tiny solutions are something that I'm able to think about if I'm really immersed as much as possible in the metaphysical world. But thank you.
But I just want to say, I think because, I mean, the question about politics is really interesting. I think because the stories are so elemental. I mean, it's really like existential conditions and I think that question about like, can we be saved by the things that we do every day? I mean,
small things that we don't pay too much attention, but at the end are the foundation between human relationships, those tiny rituals and the jokes that your father tells you and everything that every day it's every day, but at the end that's what's make human relationships stronger. And in the film they have a physical connotation that saves them. Yeah. So the pile of hats is a representation of their entire relationship since the beginning. Since you see, of course, the mom and the dad, and then the mom, the dad, and the son, and then the dad and the son. You see the three phases of the family life, but you can see you can imagine all the life that they had before by interpreting the
But the ending still is open, right? I mean,
yeah, it is. Yeah.
Right. Okay, there's yeah.
Hello.
Hello.
I was wondering, since you have this great occasion of creating the music and the animation at the same time, what was the creative process that goes around the relationship between the music and the animation? Like, what comes first, and how much one of the two goes inspired by the other thing?
Both, actually. So in terms of animation, I definitely start with music first, but I start doing the music at the same time as I'm, starting the art direction, and at the same time that I'm starting writing. So definitely, like, one feeds the other and vice versa. So sometimes normally my process of composing is I sit on the piano and I start to improvisation on a feeling that I want to feel like, or on the synthesizer I go fishing for sounds that I think transport me to the film's reality, and I compose on them. I did a small demonstration here on my last session. But then, and sometimes I get to a point where that specific music beat transmits me an idea that I should put into the writing, and then the writing, but it would be nice in a specific shot if we could see it from above. So I changed the back, like the house structure, and I draw it differently. So it's always there's always a ping pong between writing, drawing, and music for sure. But for me I'm at a point where it would be very difficult for me to direct a film in which I'm not also composing the soundtrack. Not because I think I'm the best composer, because I'm not, but it's easier for me to communicate what I would like to see in music form with myself than with another person. That's okay. Just change it slightly like this, slightly like this, slightly like this, and I feel like I have enough knowledge now in music to at least put it there what I have in mind, and hopefully I'll get better with time.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hi. That was really fantastic. All three films. I partially felt as I was watching, I suppose all of them, that it reminded me, I don't know if this was intentional, but it reminded me of some of the difficulty of creating art. And you mentioned being faced with the blank, I guess I don't know what animators use, but the blank application.
I animate everything on Photoshop, actually.
Okay, yeah. The blank
Which I don't
Photoshop
recommend,
page feels, there's something a bit daunting and a bit destabilizing about looking at it and not being able to make anything. And then also, the isolation and frustration and all of that, I felt that kind of running. And also the idea you mentioned with the hats, the little actions every day that somehow save you. And I was wondering if you felt that your films are in any way about the process of you being able to make them, or be the person who's able to compose music or something.
No, I don't think so. I feel like at least not consciously, maybe deep down a bit. I feel like I'm inspired to make films that take place normally in places where I would like to be while I'm creating the film. And while I'm in my creative process, I'm normally very isolated. I'm just in my room, just juggling between writing and the piano and then drawing. And so I would love to go to the Ice Merchant's house. Actually, there was someone that made a fake Airbnb account of the Ice Merchant's house. Oh my God. Yeah, it was funny. But I would love to visit it if I could. So most of the time, it's just places that are very close to me, where I would feel I like solitude. Of course, it's a feeling that I like to explore. But But yeah, it's not consciously about the struggle of creating something, but making a film in that specific specific place helps me, because there are two ways of looking. Like, a lot of people feel like they are stuck because, okay, what can I do? Like, there's endless possibilities, but and I don't know what to do. But if there's endless possibilities, there will be something that you can do. There's a solution for every problem. Like, for example, when I figured out the structure of the film, I didn't know the ads, that it was going to be the ads. But I knew that technically there are 1,000 possible possibilities that I can come up with, especially in animation, where you can dictate the reality's life, where the film is going to take place. So I was not anxious, because I knew that eventually I would come up with something. And eventually it was the ads. I had other solutions in my pocket, but in animation everything is possible. So you just need to be in your film's reality as long as possible, and you'll find something, I think.
Great. That was beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. No other questions? Okay. All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, João.